很有可能我们两个满脸都是血，吸血沫，you know。
Honestly, maybe my new favorite Leech clip, besides when he was on top of the cage with that Leech battle cry. Love that video, though. He says they're going to be covered in blood, and honestly, when Li the Leech Jingliang takes on Tony Ferguson, I don't expect there being anything else but a bloody outcome, right? I mean, Leech is a guy who's always coming in there ready to bang, and most recently, he cashed as a dog against Muslim Salikov, and that was like peak Leech performance of the night. Looked absolutely tremendous, and it was good to see because he got absolutely smoked by Hamzat before that. We all know how that went, but Leech was doing some really nice things prior to being fed on a silver platter to the Wolf. I mean, he knocked out Santiago Ponzinibbio in the first round of that contest and also picked up nice finishes over David Zawada and Eliseo Dos Santos before that, and also had that win over Daichi Abe. And his only loss before or after Hamzat was Neil Magny and Jake Matthews. So Leech has always faced tough guys and has beat a lot of them, and he's a true 170 pounder versus Tony Ferguson, who he's lost 4 straight, right? We know it was the recent hiccups. I mean, it's probably an understatement, but all that was done at lightweight. And in that most recent one, it was a fight we were at, and he won the first round. It was against Michael Chandler. It looked like Tony was back, right? On all 3 judges' scorecards, he wins round 1, and 17 seconds into round 2, we know what happens, right? I mean, Michael Chandler lands the front kick from hell and nets Tony that 4th loss in a row and sends him up to 170, where the UFC is serving him up to the Leech. So what are your thoughts on this one? Are you excited that they added this fight to this UFC 279 card? I mean, it was getting pretty top heavy, and then they made this announcement of the Leech versus Tony Ferguson. Do you like the matchmaking, or is this just bad news for Tony Ferguson and the Leech is going to get this dub? Who are you taking?
This is a very brutal matchup in my opinion for El Kukui. I think the Leech is just way too big of a guy. Um, he's a real 170er. I know Tony started at 170, but this is also, decade plus ago when these guys really weren't as big as they are nowadays. I mean, you look at the 170ers nowadays compared to back then, total different caliber of fighters and specimens in my opinion. And Tony just doesn't look like he put on a lot of size. Like I was, if I think Tony was going to go to 170, he needs to put on 10, maybe even 20 pounds of lean muscle to be able to compete with these guys at 170. He's going versus Kevin Holland, Kamaru Usman, Leon Scott. Look how massive those guys are, and look at El Kukui. El Kukui looks like a solid 155er, a big 155er, I would say, but not the biggest, right? So this is, man, I hate to see it, but I think the losing streak continues, and he's going to be on a 5 straight barn burner. I think this is still going to be competitive because Tony is no joke, but I think the strength and size is going to be at his disadvantage. If he had, trouble with his last 4 fights, I don't see how he wouldn't have trouble with the Leech. Maybe Tony gets an easy slick sub and just uses that beautiful technique. Maybe. I just don't see it if the karate master couldn't get it done versus the Leech. I don't see El Kukui getting it done either. So I think Leech is going to win by KO 3rd round, and it's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, bloodbath nonetheless for sure. And I'm glad you touched on the fact that Tony Ferguson did win the Ultimate Fighter at 170, because I think a lot of people, if you're trying to craft an argument for Tony, it's probably that, right? Well, he won the Ultimate Fighter at 170, so fighting against a welterweight like Leech won't be a problem. But you're right, that was a long time ago, and although Tony Ferguson won the Ultimate Fighter at 170, literally all of his fights have been at 155 in the UFC. And we know he went on that beautiful 11-fight win streak. I mean, the things that Tony Ferguson was doing when he was peak Tony Ferguson are laudable and applaudable for sure. But it's been a little bit different of a story of recently. And I'm with you in that although it's a heartbreaking pick, I got to roll with the Leech in this one. I was interested to see that Tony Ferguson's going to have such a sizable reach advantage. He's going to have nearly 5 inches on the Leech, and they are going to be of similar height, but I think you touched on the weight. I mean, it's a little bit different of a distribution in the sense where I feel like Leech is probably cutting a little bit of weight to get down to 170, and Tony, you got to imagine, is pretty much probably walking around closer to 170. Not much of a cut for him, and I think they're just kind of built a little bit differently. So I'm going to roll with you. I'm going to take Leach. I think it's going to go the distance, though, and it's going to be a close, bloody contest. Maybe Tony even wins a round. Maybe he even gets a submission late. I think that Tony is a threat at all moments of the contest, but I think this is a Leach coming out party, and it's going to ultimately, in the end, be a net positive for both guys because I think Tony's going to make a good account of himself. It's just not going to be quite enough to thwart the absolutely surging, peaking younger Leach, and that's why I got to roll with Li Jingliang. So, any last thoughts?
No, I think it's a fun fight, great matchup, but it almost feels like the UFC's trying to get a few older fighters out, Diaz and Tony. But we'll get into Diaz later. Make sure to smash that meat, subscribe, and throw the comments. Who you got? Are you guys taking Al Kukui and hoping he gets this done, or is it a no-brainer and it's the Leech?